Let's take a look at the overall satellite picture this morning, and I want to point out a couple of features. First, in the Gulf, we've got a tropical trough. That is just an area of low pressure that's sending spokes of energy. It's tropical downpours, especially along the coastal regions. And we also have another area of low pressure off the Carolina coast that is spreading some heavier rainfalls, and we are expecting more isolated flash flooding setups later on this afternoon, as well as we have a stalled frontal boundary with an area of low pressure of its own around Oklahoma, sneaking into the Red River areas of North Texas. That left some serious rain in the overnight hours with 2, 3, if upwards to 6 inches in some isolated spots. And that could set the stage for more heavy rain later on this afternoon, as you've got precipitable water value contents at 2 to 3 inches per hour, especially if you heat up the atmosphere in this type of environment. So overall, the temperatures, at least for the middle part of the country, has actually been on the overall milder side or average side for the central part of the U.S. But if you hang out west, it's been above average, and if not hot. I mean, we're talking, it hit 100 degrees the other day in Portland. We could be right up there again today as record heat likely unfolds across the West Coast. And we also have more heat that's going to unfold as well across the Northeast. So if you live in the middle part of the country, you're thinking, hey, this has not been a bad summer. But if you live on the coastal regions, you're definitely feeling summer in a big way. So if we take a look at the overall setup this afternoon, here is our stalled frontal boundary. And with this boundary, and as we kind of bubble up the atmosphere and heat it up, they left an outflow boundary in the overnight hours. That's where the culprit is going to be for more initiation later on this afternoon, likely after the 3, 4 o'clock time frame. Storms should start to erupt within this region, as well as areas along where we do have that tropical trough and that low pressure hanging off the Carolina coast. That is going to be the culprit for more rain to spread inland through Tennessee, as well as further north into Kentucky, getting back into areas of the Ohio Valley with these two features today. And then going into tomorrow, that low pressure center will likely just kind of sit and spin where it's at right now. It's going to be a stalled boundary, so it's not going to be able to go anywhere. And so again, we're going to be laying over some leftover outflow boundaries, and that could set the stage once we have daytime heating kind of activate these diurnal heating type thunderstorms. That could leave some isolated flash flooding type setups along this region within the Texas region, back into the southeast, as well as getting into areas of the mid-Atlantic and getting into the northeast. So if you combine the 2 days over the next 48 hours as far as precipitation, kind of what we're expecting, yes, little to nothing, unfortunately, with all the smoke and the wildfires they've been dealing with off the West Coast. I really don't, unfortunately, see any help anytime soon. But at the middle part of the country, that's where most of the action is, along these boundaries and these isolated spots, those where you can see some of those serious rainfall totals of 2, 3. We saw some 6, even some 7-inch amounts last night just on the eastern side of the DFW Metroplex. And we're also going to be seeing some heavier rain complements to our tropical trough and our low pressure off the Carolina coast. So this combination combined should leave some tropical downpours in its wake, and that will likely spread inland going into areas of Georgia, back into the Carolinas, getting into Tennessee, and that swings further north into West Virginia and all the way up into Pennsylvania, New York, and getting into Vermont, as well as into Connecticut and Massachusetts. But as far as the smoke goes, here's what we're looking at. We've been kind of dealing with this a good part of the summer, and it's just the combination of the wildfires. You got the Canadian fires that with the north wind that brings down the smoke, getting into areas of the Dakotas, back into Minnesota, as well as in Wisconsin. They've been kind of dealing with day after day. And then of course we've got all the wildfires that's happening across the West Coast, back into California especially. That going to bring more smoke later on this afternoon along those regions, as well as into Arizona, back into New Mexico, getting into Utah, as well as the western regions of Colorado. So if we look at the wildfires, yes, that has been alive and prevalent. In fact, the Gifford fire is up to 122,000 acres burned. That's the largest of the state so far this season, and it's about 33% containment. So the firefighters were working overtime to try to put that blaze out, but it's just bone dry out there. You got low humidity, and every time the wind picks up, it just can just spread it. So it's just kind of fighting a losing battle, and really no help with Mother Nature coming anytime soon. So if we take a look at the overall setup going into Thursday, yeah, that's the ridge that's coming back, right? So we got that little bit of reprieve with a window of opportunity for showers and thunderstorms. But once the ridge builds back in across the middle part of the country, that just kind of shuts the tap down, and the ridge builds back in. You got sinking air, and that's going to be the culprit from Thursday, likely heading into the weekend, especially for the south and as well as in the southeast. But now let's turn to the tropics, because obviously this is hurricane season. We had Dexter that went well out to sea, and this is our first formidable storm of the season. This is Tropical Storm Erin, which is our 5th named storm. So technically we're still trending on that above average status. It's a 45-mile-per-hour tropical storm. It is moving westbound around 22 miles an hour. So all indications are it should likely become a hurricane, the first hurricane of the season, on Thursday. And then all indications will continue to that west, if not west, northwest track by the time we head into Saturday, if not Sunday morning, and become a major hurricane. Of course, that is 7 days out. And of course, the million-dollar question, what would happen after that, right? So if you look at all the models and kind of what we're looking at right now, most of them have it trending a little bit further north, and that would keep it just north outside of these islands. So these don't look to be affected as well as Puerto Rico. So if it continues on this track, it's actually just going to be out in the open waters. But most all of them, notice the end, the 168 hour, that's 7 days out. Most of them tend to track it north, if not, going northwest. So yeah, all indications are it stays off the East Coast, and it doesn't go inland, and it stays well out of the open waters. But of course, we'll be watching this every step of the way on this channel. But what's interesting after that, it lines up like a conveyor belt. I mean, you've got these waves that are coming off of Africa. So by the time we head into Monday, we've got the formidable storm just north of Puerto Rico, but we also have another wave back behind that one, potentially another wave back behind that one, and yet another wave trying to come off the African coast. So things do look to be more active, especially with Erin starting the trip of these waves after waves after waves coming off the African coast. So we got a lot to track over the next couple of weeks as we get deeper into hurricane season, as we hit towards that prime time. Remember, as you pass the August 15th category, from August 15th to October 15th, that's literally 70% of the season right there. So that's the bulk of it. This is fairly normal to see an active pattern. This is what we're expecting as we trend towards the middle of August. But also that heat is going to be coming alive with a vengeance as we go into the weekend, with the ridge building back, and with the combination of the recent rains along the southeast and the middle part of the country. Unfortunately, that's going to bring the humidity back and the dangerous heat indices back as well. So this is hazardous heat coming back for, the middle of the month, especially further south along the coast. This area has been getting a lot of rain lately. So once the ridge builds back in, that just heats things up, combined with all the moisture that's in the atmosphere that's saturated in the ground as well. That's going to cause the dew points to rise substantially and cause the heat indices to rise substantially. So we're probably talking widespread heat advisories, if not extreme heat warnings, to come for that 16th, 17th, say 18th timeframe, especially further off to the coast. But in the middle part of the country, most of the story is the ridge will be building back at least through we'll say the 20th time frame, because we do have a little bit something interesting. Of course, August is the hottest month. So, but we do see a trend of it trying to turn cooler as we head towards that 21st time frame. So I'll show you that in a little bit. But before that, we got to talk about more severe weather likely to unfold, with the ridge mainly isolated further south across the central US and the southeast. That's going to put the storm track well to the north again. So we should start to see more storms likely trying to form towards that 19th, 25th time frame, getting into Montana, back into the Dakotas again, as well as Minnesota. And that would likely continue for that last week of the month, as well as we're watching a fairly significant trough trying to come down across the east as this ridge pulls back. So as this goes back into the desert Southwest and kind of hangs out there into California, this opens the door for northwest flow and a pretty significant trough to come in. And that would be a cooler look as we head towards that 21st time frame of August. And a couple of days after that, this is going to be a nice little cool shot, or at least a reprieve, and a huge pattern change would be on the table by then, as definitely some much cooler air, at least for August standards, looks to be on the table once we pass that 21st, especially going to that 23rd, 24th, 25th time frame. If you live to the central and say eastern 2/3 of the US, you'll be feeling this little cool down coming in that time frame. So guys, I appreciate you watching. Do like this video, definitely hit the subscribe button, and catch the next update while I protect you before and after the storm.